Welcome to Balanced Life with Debi, Carlin, Boyle. Conversations connecting to a healthier you. The show that gives you all the latest and greatest health and wellness information to inspire you to live a life of balance and joy. Debi Carlin Boyle is a health and nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor who helps her clients live in balance with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. Please welcome your host, Debi Carlin Boyle.
Good afternoon. Welcome to my show, Balanced Life, where conversations connecting to a healthier you. We got one of those kind of conversations for you today. But before we get started, I want to remind you that I am an interactive show, and I would love for you to call in and get involved with our conversation today. You can either call in or you can go to my Facebook page, which is Fit by Design, and you can make a comment or ask a question, and we'll get back to you right after the show. So if you want to call in, the number here is 323-843-2826. So give us a call at any point because I have a great guest today. So my guest today is Julie Carmen, who in her most distinguished career as an actress has co-starred in 75 films for directors Robert Redford, John Cassavetes, John Carpenter, Quentin Tarantino, and Michael Mann, to name a few. Julie is a trained dancer who has danced on Broadway in Zoot Suit. She has also been practicing yoga since high school. Julie is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified yoga therapist. With 2 movies coming out, Julie still divides her time between acting, seeing patients in her private psychotherapy practice, and is the mental health director at Loyola Marymount University Yoga Therapy RX. Julie is founder and director of the first yoga therapy for mental health supervised clinical practicum at Venice Family Clinic, where she trains 6 certified yoga therapists per year to work with behavioral health patients. To talk about this and so much more, will you please help me welcome to my show today, Julie Carmen. There's our applause that I told you about. We have an audience. They're secretly, they're hidden in the walls. Yes. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Debi. Hi.
I'm so glad that you took the time and that you could be here with me today. And we can talk about this wonderful and distinguished career that you have.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I've listened to some of your shows, and I like the way you go deep and you talk about the underlying issues about everything.
Yeah. You know what I find, I've been doing the show, we talked about this briefly, but I've been doing the show for coming up on 3 years, first with co-host Del, and now that since January here. And everybody's got a story. And their story always brings them to what they're doing today. And sometimes it takes things that overlap in life, and sometimes it takes things that you realize you're passionate about as you live life that brings you to something that you really want to do, sort of this third act that we're in. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you right up front to tell me a little bit about your beginnings and where you were born and what got you so started into
in theater.
Yeah.
Well, I was born into a wonderful family, which not everybody can say
that. Yeah.
That. Mm-hmm. My kids say when they went off to college, wow, a lot of people don't love their families like we all. We're very tight in a healthy way. I was born in New York, and we lived about 20 minutes outside of Manhattan in New Jersey. So I was in the city all the time with my grandparents, and my dad would take me off Broadway to see plays at Herbert Berghoff Studio, and the public theater was just getting started in those days. So he was.
Were you very young at that time when you started going to Broadway shows?
I was going more to off Broadway, and then I started doing a lot of off. My first job was a choreographer at Intar. I was 16, and I'd been dancing since 2nd grade, so I had an innate sense of movement and theatrical movement, and then ended up getting my BS from the State University of New York. Had something called University Without Walls for the Balanchine dancers, and I did that because I was studying with Sandy Meisner and Uta Hagen separately, different times, one at Neighborhood Playhouse and then at HB. So I got my college degree by studying professionally and then writing more academic papers about it.
But did you fall in love with the theater through mostly the art of dance, or were you in love with acting as well, or both?
It was always the art of dance, and then I hurt my foot. I tore the plantar fascia, and I basically tried theater, and I felt like, wow, it's got the same freedom like Isadore Duncan was my spirit animal, spirit person. And I said, it has the same spirit, but you just add voice. So I started training with voice and speech teacher from Neighborhood Playhouse, Joan Lang. And I started singing classes. In New York, you have to have a triple threat. You have to sing, dance, and act.
Yes.
And out here, not so much.
Yeah. And here, it helps. It definitely helps. But New York, you do, because when you audition, they expect it. I think of everything. So what was the turning point that got you into like your first stage show and stuff?
The first. Well, I did a lot of off-Broadway.
Okay.
And then an off-Broadway call at the American Place Theater with Martin Balsam. And then I got hired to do the female lead in a feature for Universal with James Brolin that Sidney Furie, who had just done Lady Sings the Blues with Diana Ross. It was called Night of the Juggler. And he said Universal wanted Tuesday Weld in brownface. And Sidney Furie stood by his principles and said, if you don't have Julie play the Puerto Rican woman, then I'm going to quit my job as director.
Which is nice.
I was exposed to somebody who had that kind of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bob Butler ended up directing it afterwards, but they both directed it. So I started that way, but I was always in the healing arts, which is this blend. It wasn't a sudden turnaround for me where I decided to go back to graduate school and become a marriage family therapist. That did happen. But I was raised in a household where my grandmother and great aunt were both nurses from Germany who had fled Hamburg, and they lived with us for 11 years. And my great aunt had been an actress with Max Reinhardt in Midsummer Night's Dream.
So I know all these names. I hope my audience does too. These names are passionate to me. As a theater major, I have a degree in theater.
Oh wow!
So
we have a lot in common.
Yes, exactly. So these names are sparking. These little things are snapping off from me.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story though.
No, it's okay. I can go on and on.
I'm sure, because you have such a vast career. So you really made that jump. You got on the map. You became an actress that was well known. You were able to talk about some of the movies that you did, and I talked briefly about the directors you worked with. But
the John Cassavetes film, I would say, was the most life-changing moment professionally and personally. I had done Night of the Juggler, and Steve Keston. I like to name the angels in my life. He was the first AD on the Sidney Furie, Bob Butler film, and he brought me in. He said, "Have you ever heard of John Cassavetes?" And I, of course, had seen Just Lady Under the Influence many times and had cried through it, and it was out at that time. So he said, "John Cassavetes wants to meet you." He saw clips of the film we just finished. And I went in, and he just started nodding, and the different keys that were sitting around the room with him started nodding. And then he said, "Take this script, sit with my secretary, read the first 20 pages to yourself, and come back and tell me if you like it." And I read the first 20 pages of Gloria that Jenna Rowland starred in, and I came back and said, "It's the most amazing
what's not to like?"
And he said, "It's yours." And I just burst into tears. And he said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Because usually you have to jump through flaming circus hoops to get a McDonald's commercial."
I know. I know the business too well. You're right. And look at that. You fit perfectly.
It was the right
into
casting. Sometimes the things you work the hardest for, you don't get.
No.
But it sharpens your tools and sharpens your resolve. And then the things that are the most life-changing fall in your lap, like Robert Redford. He called, and I was nursing my newborn on the set in Pozos in Mexico, doing a movie with Raul Julia and Armand Asante.
Tell our audience what the name of that movie was.
That was called The Penitent. Not many people saw The Penitent, but I got a call from my agent saying, Robert Redford wants you to fly to New Mexico for the weekend and audition for Milagro Beanfield War.
There it is.
And I said, I have a 4-month-old that I'm nursing every 2 hours, and it's a 4-hour drive to the airport. There's no way. I have to turn it down. So he looked at the Cassavetes film Gloria, and he gave me the role without an audition. So those were the days when things were...
When they knew when they wanted you. And it's also a testament to the time. Like directors were very succinct about what they wanted. I think there's so much more content out there to be had and so many diverse actors that are out there, whereas the directors, I'm not trying to age anything, but I think the old school sort of older film directors from back in the day had a real vision about what they wanted, how they wanted it to play out. They didn't need to see, there could be 100 more people out there and I could be missing one of them. They already knew when they saw talent.
You're very astute because if you look at all the directors you named, I have to think back who they were. I auditioned for... No, Quentin knew
Tarantino,
my work.
John Carpenter.
No, but Michael Mann I didn't audition for. They are more auteurs. And now things, but they also have the clout. John Carpenter, his wife was script supervisor. Sandy King produced most of John's films in those days when we did In the Mouth of Madness. And she said, you need Julie Carmen to play opposite Sam Neill, because I had done a movie of the week with her with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she remembered. Yeah. So then it was just a meeting. So these are directors who have the clout to say,
my point. Yeah.
This is who I want. Now I find at this stage of my career, I'm auditioning more than I ever did.
Ever had to, because the directors aren't as seasoned. There's a lot more of them because there's so much more content, which is opening the door because of streaming television on all those platforms and people auditioning all over. There's more to grab from in different areas, and you think it's almost like a dating site. Once you get on a dating site, you don't want to settle on any one person because there's a million others out there you might be missing.
It's very hard for this new generation, I think, because there's this smorgasbord approach, and it's
agreed.
The attachment isn't the same. But now it's more of a committee decision, and even algorithms are making casting decisions. They're putting electrodes on audiences to feel the biometrics to test.
Isn't that interesting?
The effect that actors have. So it's all right. I'll transition with you into the healing arts. That what brought me is I didn't have a sense of self. When I was working all the time and had my first child in a marriage, and I was on the road 7-8 months of a year and cared about my family, I was in analysis, I'll put it out there, 3 days a week doing dream analysis, and I loved it so much that I decided to study it. And on my own time, in between films, I just went to school and eventually got licensed as a marriage and family therapist. And the yoga I have always done.
Yeah, you were saying since high school.
Since high school, but then did my teacher training with Mati Ezrati, who founded Yoga Works, and Lisa Walford, who's a senior Iyengar instructor. And that I felt that dance for me, especially Broadway and off-Broadway, is your body, it services the choreography at the expense of the health of your joints.
I have an older daughter who's a professional, or was a professional dancer, and now is a yoga instructor.
I've seen her dance.
You have, yeah.
And
been through it as a dance mom, yeah.
While yoga is not performance-oriented, so for me it was a 180-degree flip to focus on what's inside, what the body calls for, how the body wants to move, and if it's intrinsic to where I'm at any given moment. And the yoga therapy also is about guarding and taking care of those areas of the body that need special attention.
That are the ones that are hurting the most. Tell the audience, what is the definition of yoga therapy?
Good question. There's the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and there are about 3,000 members, more than that now. You can go to iayt.org, and you'll read all about it.
Okay.
But we practice this elevator speech because everybody asks that question.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's one-on-one. A yoga therapist works individually with a client, and the whole focus is on finding that person's yoga. What postures, what breath, what thoughts, what aphorisms are right for each individual, taking into account their dosha, their time of life, their time of day, their issues that they're working on. So I was working with a fire chief who had very extreme post-traumatic stress disorder, and he said, well, he does breath practice based on a CD. And I said, bring it in, because I'm not sure if it's the right breath practice. Well, it raised his anxiety enormously.
It can do that. It
right.
can do that.
Versus,
Absolutely.
and I gave him the absolute opposite breath practice to reduce his anxiety.
I think everybody, whether they're suffering from, we all have, our cross to bear, let's say, whether it's a physical or a mental, emotional injury, if you will. And I think everybody's so individual, to take the practice of yoga and individualize it. I love, because that's what I do in my practice as a health coach, but I have never heard it put as yoga therapy. And really, it is yoga therapy if you're working individually with somebody.
The word therapist, actually, when I got my clinical psych degree, they said we're not allowed to use the word therapist until we're licensed. So we are a psychotherapy intern. A psychologist is a doctor. A psychotherapist usually has a master's in clinical psych. And in yoga, we're moving the profession in the direction of licensure for yoga therapists. But a yoga therapist needs a minimum of 1,000 hours training.
Okay.
Loyola Marymount is where I teach. I'm director of yoga therapy for mental health at their Yoga Therapy RX program that Larry Payne started. And
I think that's wonderful. My daughter has her dance degree from Loyola Marymount.
They have a beautiful dance department.
Dance department. Yeah. And it was one of the best experiences for her. She, it's just such a great place to be connected to.
Right. It's a beautiful school. They have a wonderful yoga therapy and basic yoga teacher training program.
Got a lot of her yoga love, which is what is, she manages a yoga studio to this day.
I didn't know.
Yeah, Core Power Yoga.
Oh,
She's
great.
they're opening
Nice.
Westlake, but they're opening a new one the end of this month in Thousand Oaks.
Second generation.
Yeah. Well, and I'm in the health and wellness, but she took dance like you did and parlayed it into yoga through Loyola Marymount. It was one of her, so this is all very familiar, that
together.
program. So this program that you're in, so you train other people
certified
to
yoga therapists.
Okay.
Right, they've gone through the whole LMU program to become a certified yoga therapist.
Okay.
Versus a yoga teacher has 200-hour training.
Yes.
And to be registered yoga teacher, which is a great beginning. But someone with Parkinson's, someone with cancer, someone with PTSD, certainly or rape experience, domestic violence, those people, if they are sent to a yoga teacher, sometimes the teacher doesn't have the layers of training.
Yeah.
So I'm dual certified as a licensed marriage family therapist and a certified yoga therapist. So I train the certified yoga therapist how to work with the behavioral health patients.
Specifically for what's
for
different
mostly the
behaviors,
domestic violence
yeah.
clinic at
Okay.
Venice Family Clinic. So we have 3 treatment rooms and a 2-way mirror where I have 2 therapists with 1 patient. So because for security reasons and also for assistance, because they're just learning to work with patients, and one person will do the note taking and get the props and the other person will interact. So that's how I break it down, and then I can watch through the two-way mirror. Venice Family Clinic is a wonderful training site.
It must be so satisfying for you, too, to see the transitions and to see somebody who's coming in, not only the people you're training, but the people that they're working with, seeing the change in them being made for the better, for the good.
Absolutely. It's so rewarding. When people say, why are you still acting? How can you be a therapist? Aren't you stressed with all these professions? I don't do anything a lot, but I do them deeply and for many years. So I practice self-care, that I don't take on new patients, I refer out. Once in a while, someone will refer someone to me who's just the right fit. But, like Suzanne Summers doesn't mind me talking about her, but she loves it. Actually, I've been her private yoga teacher for 18 years, 3 days a week. So, and she wrote a new book that's coming out in the fall and interviewed me for a chapter on yoga and how you can do it into your hundreds. People
That's
are living
right.
longer.
It's so it's so beneficial for longevity and quality. It just gets out all of the cobwebs. And it literally in our heads and our joints and our muscles, and it just makes you. I mean, I've seen some of the photos that I think Kurt is putting up as we're speaking. They're so beautiful of you in your poses, and there's something more about when I see those pictures of you, it's more than just the pose. There's something coming from the inside out that feels very relaxing and comforting to me to see. They're beautiful photos, Julie, just beautiful.
Thank you
I have
so
to say
much.
that. And I've had lots of people who practice yoga and on my show in the past, but there's something a little more to what you're doing. And I think it has to do with the fact that you're a yoga therapist and also the fact that you're an actress who understands coming to understand a person's ability to find their truth, because an actor has to do that with a character. So for you are helping people find that within themselves. And so it's taking the two things that are part of your career and putting them together. How miraculous. You must feel very satisfied.
I feel satisfied, but in that very humbling way where one can't be overwhelmed by, I don't feel like I'm shifting hats. I feel like it's all one. That breath, movement, being present with another human being, listening deeply, letting what they say move me or touch me, affect me, metabolizing it, sharing some response, and if I'm in front of a camera and have the magnified traits of another character's life, doing all those same things, but in a Zen way. So I think of acting and even auditioning with a real Zen approach.
Must really help your auditions.
And that's why I don't feel the buildup of disappointment if I test for a Netflix show that shoots in Budapest, and I love Budapest. And I have relatives in Budapest. I kind of wanted to go, but then you don't hear about it. And I just always embrace, that opportunity to do that. Everything's fleeting. It's Zen in the art of auditioning.
And everything's a learning experience.
Exactly.
Those are things I've been telling my kids, and I'm sure you have been telling yours since day one. It's not a failure. It's not you can take it and use it to your advantage. It isn't a disadvantage when something doesn't work out.
Like in yoga, there's no there. There's no end point.
Right.
It's just being in a posture. I call every posture an opportunity to meditate. No matter what posture you're in, meditate on your breath in that posture. And that's how you find Sthira Sukha Asana, which is the steadiness and effortlessness, which is the way the asanas are talked about in the Yoga Sutra. Finding that steadiness and effortlessness by just considering every posture, every way you sit and stand and move is an opportunity to meditate on being present.
I love that. What a way to wellness. We are down to our last minute. Can you believe that? Didn't I tell you we were going to go so fast? But I mean, what you're saying just resonates with me, and I hope it's resonating with the audience. It makes so much sense. But you do have 2 movies coming out, and before we go, we want to hear what those movies are and how people can find them, and when they're coming out. And then I also want you to talk about, because I know you have Yoga Talks. It's like an online magazine. How people can find that, where they can get CDs and actually be taught by you.
Okay.
So go ahead.
All right. Well, the 2 films, I am Peter Fonda's love interest in a funny romantic comedy called You Can't Say No, which it's a clever game it's written by Who's Miller, directed by Paul Kramer, and a female director of photography, Amy Beeling. You Can't Say No. It's coming out May 7th. It'll be on all the streaming services, iTunes and all that, and then eventually for 2 years on Showtime. So
nice.
that's what they
That's
worked
exciting.
out. It's an indie film that was independently financed, and we're thrilled it got this distribution. Peter Fonda, Marguerite Moreau, Who's Miller, and Hamish Linklater, and myself.
Nice.
And then the other one, I play Edward James Olmos's wife, and we live in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, Mexico. And he goes to be a busboy at the World Trade Center. Windows on the World is the name of the movie. And then we see on TV that the World Trade Center is bombed. And I go into a catatonic depression, and my son is worried that I'm going to die, and I'm the only one, I swear I saw him on TV. So my son goes to New York to find his father, and Ryan Guzman plays the lead, and he falls in love with Chelsea Gilligan. It's called Windows on the World.
Okay.
It's going to be in the Mendocino Film Festival June 1st.
Oh, coming up.
And we just won 3 awards at the Method Film Festival in Los Angeles. Best Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Supporting Actor. Won the Humanitarian Film Award at the Sedona Film Festival. So we just started.
Really well received.
We just started that.
Nice.
We only did 2 festivals.
So tell me quick, because our time is up, what it is,
Yoga
how people
Talks,
can access you.
It's hard to reach me.
Okay.
I always say go to IMDb or, my agents.
All right.
And Yoga Talks isn't really functioning as much other than a placeholder.
Okay.
I have a basic CD called Yoga Slow Flow.
Okay.
When
Saw that.
it's a 20-minute practice that pretty much anyone can do, and it's meant to be done every day. So yogatalks.com and Yoga Slow Flow is the one for the general public.
Okay. And give us your website, juliecarmen.com.
JulieCarmenActress.com.
Actress.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the best thing is Instagram and Twitter. I'm Julie Carmen 3, the number 3.
Perfect.
On Instagram and Twitter.
You heard that right here.
So
and
check
final thoughts, Julie,
Yes.
for my audience. I always say this to my guests. From what we've talked about today, what would you like to leave my audience with? Words of wisdom.
My only thoughts are stop the hate. Just compassion and empathy for every living being, sentient being. Stop the hate, and the fear leads to divisiveness, and everybody suffers. So I'd say stop the hate.
And one of the ways to do that is to start working right here on yourself, which you help people do, which I love. And I thank you for taking the time to do my show today.
Thanks, Debi.
And I have to thank you for joining us. I hope, such a remarkable lady. I hope this has helped you to learn something about this wonderful person and maybe something about yourself. And remember, I'm the show that wants you to keep connecting to a healthier you. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. Thank you.